Today I want to tell you about a topic that can be challenging to understand, and that topic is type erasure in Swift. Now, when I first heard about type erasure, I had a lot of trouble really understanding how it worked and what it could bring to my code base, and then it was only when I found a particular example that things really clicked for me. And so in this video I want to share this example with you, hoping that it could also help you understand this challenging topic. So this example, it was trying to build what we could call a declarative API to sort a collection over multiple properties, implementing what is often called a sort descriptor. So let's take a look at what this sort descriptor could look like. So you can see I've pasted a type called sort descriptor. It's a generic type. It has two generic arguments. The first one is called element. So it's the element of the collection that we want to sort. So for instance, it could be users, people, articles, and so on. And then we have the property that we actually want to sort on. So it could be things like a date of publication, a number of views, any kind of things that is comparable. And you can see that indeed this type is constrained because it must conform to the protocol comparable. Now let's take a look at what is inside the sort descriptor. What is its public API? So we have a closure called are in sorted order, and this closure, it takes two instances of element and it returns a boolean that says whether or not these two instances are in sorted order. So as you can imagine, this function would be called by a sorting algorithm. And then we have an init, which is going to allow us to instantiate a sort descriptor. We can see that this init, it takes two arguments. So the first one is a reference to the property, and it is represented by a key path. So a key path that we can invoke on an element in order to get the value of a property. And then we have a boolean that says whether or not we want a sort in ascending order. So when the boolean is true, it would be ascending order. When it is false, it would be descending order. Now let's take a look at what's happening inside the init. So the only state of a sort descriptor is this function are in sorted order. So this is what we're going to initialize. You can see that we init it with a function. In this function, we are given as argument two instances of element, and we want to compare their properties. So the first thing we need to do is to get the actual values for the properties. So we do it using the key path that is given as an argument, as you can see here, and then we perform the actual comparison. So we test the boolean that says whether we are comparing in ascending or descending order, and depending on the value of the boolean, we perform the correct comparison, here for ascending order and here for descending order. So that's all there is to this implementation of a sort descriptor. Now let's try to actually instantiate a sort descriptor. So first I'm going to need a type that I can sort on, and I'm going to try and keep things as simple as possible. So you can see I've just pasted a type called person, and I've kept things simple because there are only two properties, a name and an age, and you can see that both properties, they are represented by types that do conform to the protocol comparable. Now let's try and create a sort descriptor. So maybe a sort descriptor for the property name and in ascending order. So I'm going to store my sort descriptor in a local variable, sort descriptor, and I'm going to instantiate it. So the key path is going to be person.name, and I said we want it to be in ascending order. So this is working perfectly fine, but of course a sort descriptor by itself is not that useful. It's when you get multiple sort descriptors that you actually get to perform a sorting over several properties, and this is when this declarative API would take all its power. So let's try and have multiple sort descriptors. So first I'm going to take my sort descriptor and put it in an array. And now I'm going to try and add a second sort descriptor in the array. So let's say a sort descriptor for the property age, and this time in descending order. So I'm instantiating a new sort descriptor. So this time for the property person.age, and we said in descending order. And as you can see now, the compiler is no longer happy. I have a compilation error that says heterogeneous collection literal could only be inferred to array of any, meaning that the only type the compiler is able to infer that satisfies the content of the array is an array of any, and the compiler wants me to state this explicitly. Now, of course, this is not what we want, because if we have an array of any, we lose all the type safety information that is actually useful when implementing this kind of sort descriptor. So of course, we don't want this. So let's try and understand why the compiler is not able to find a better type than an array of any. So let's try to write by hand the types of the two values inside our array. So the first one, it's a sort descriptor. The first generic argument, so the element, it's a person. And the second one, so the property, it's the name, and its type is a string. Okay, that's the type for the first element of the array. Now let's do the same thing for the second element of the array. So still a sort descriptor. the element is still a person, but this time the property is an age, and our age is represented by an int. So the type is source descriptor person int. And now we can understand why the compiler is no longer able to find a type for the array. It's because, well, both values have different types. And of course, this is an issue because we need to be able to store our sorting descriptor in a single collection while also preserving all the type safety information that is encoded in the generic arguments. So let's see how we can solve this situation. And to solve the situation, well, we're going to focus on the type source descriptor. We are going to focus on both its generic argument, and we are going to see that basically in the life cycle of an instance of source descriptor, well, these two generic arguments, they don't basically play the same role, because if we focus first on the element, we can see that the element is going to be useful for the whole lifetime of the object, because whenever someone wants to call the function are in sorted order, it's important that we actually have the type information about what kind of element it is in order to make sure that we are passing the right value to the closure. So the element, it makes sense to keep it around as long as an instance of source descriptor is in memory. But for the property argument, it's actually a little bit different, because if we take a look at the init, we can see that after the init, well, we no longer use this type property. It's very important that we have it in the init, because this way the compiler can check that we are indeed providing a key path to a property that is a property of the element and that is also comparable. But once we have been using this key path inside our closure, well, we no longer need to have this type information lying around, because our closure, it's a let constant, so it can no longer be modified. So we are sure that indeed at the time of the init, the type safety check has been performed by the compiler. But after that, this information about which type the property is, it's actually no longer useful. So it could be removed, it could be erased from the signature of source descriptor. And this is actually what we're going to do. So as you can see, I'm going to select the type property. I'm going to cut it so as to remove it from the signature of source descriptor, and I'm going to add it instead as a generic argument of the init. And you can see that just by doing that, well, my compiler error is now gone, because now my source descriptor, it only has one generic argument, and the type of both values in the array, well, since the property is gone from the signature of the source descriptor type, now both source descriptors have indeed the same type, which is source descriptor of person. And of course, everything is still working as we expect. We still have the same level of type safety, because when we create the source descriptor, indeed the compiler checks that the name and the age are properties on the type person and are indeed comparable. And then when we call the closure are in sorted order on the source descriptor, the compiler is also going to check that we are providing the correct element, the correct type for the arguments of the closure. So that was my example to explain what type erasure is. As you've seen, type erasure, it's a technique that we can use in Swift whenever we want to remove information about a generic type past some point in our code, because past that point in our code, this information is no longer useful, and it can actually be a burden for us whenever we want to store our generic types in collections or that sort of thing. Now, as I've said in the introduction, this is the explanation of type erasure that made the most sense to me at the time. I'm not saying that it is the best explanation of this topic. Actually, in the description of the video, I will be putting you some links to other articles that explain this idea of what type erasure is from different point of view, and I can only strongly recommend that you take the time to read these articles. This way you will have, we could say, the best picture of what this technique is and all the ways that it can be useful. So thank you for watching this video. You know how it goes: liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing. If you have maybe some explanation of your own on how to understand what type erasure is, well, please say it in the comment, and I would be very curious to know about it. Thank you for watching this video, and see you next time.